Thank you so much for tuning in to She's All Over the Place with Kiriaki. That's me. Welcome back to She's All Over the Place. I am so excited to have you here. Parul Dua Makkar is joining me. She's a dentist. We had her on already, and the link will be in the show notes so you can, after this episode, listen to that episode. She's won many awards, and she's also the co-author of the book titled Life Interrupted, Dr. Dua's Survival Guide, which is a winner of CIPA EVVY Award for Motivational Inspirational Books. We're going to be talking about the book today, processing grief, finding hope after loss, how life changes trajectory, and her why for what she does. Parul, how are you? Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me here again, Katie.
Yay. It's great. It's great to have you. It was like, the shining light, and there's so much depth and such a beautiful wisdom journey that you have. And, talking about oral care is so important to me. I used to go to the dentist, as you know, twice a year, every year for a cleaning, and hygiene is the number one thing for me. So it was really impactful information. So again, people, please look at the show notes below and go listen to that episode after you hear this episode. So congratulations on your book.
Thank you. Yeah, it got featured by American, Canadian, and the British Dental Journal. So it's kind of making its way around the world.
Wow. And when did you publish the book?
In 2021, August. So my brother passed away in March. And then after his death, I just, this was his last wish. And so I published it right after, posthumous.
And was it self-publishing?
I used a vanity publishing company. So it's like a hybrid. And there's Laurel Elite, and they're based out of New Hampshire.
Wonderful, wonderful. And it says co-authored. So did you, what's your process as a co-author? What does that mean for you?
So as you know, Manu was 34. He was my younger and only sibling. And he was diagnosed with oral cancer. Ironic, because we're both dentists. And he was diagnosed at 32. And he knew his cancer was aggressive and it was coming back. He had sold his practice right around COVID. And so in September of 2020, he started writing a series of blogs as an outlet to the cancer journey that he was on. He had no friends that could be around him. He was going through treatment alone. Parents couldn't accompany him through chemo, radiation, immunotherapy. So he started blogging and he's like, I want these published. And at that time, I saw him physically in December flying from New York to Canada under those restrictions. And I said, okay, you work on the writing, focus on that, and I'll find a publisher for you. And that's how I got in touch. And in February, I told him, I've got somebody who loves your writing. Let's get this book going. He said, no, I want to write. I have time. I want to write more. And I said, go for it. Keep writing. And unfortunately, he died a few weeks later. And so when I entered his apartment, I saw everything was the same, but Manu wasn't there. He went into emergency with a leg swelling, and he had a clot, and that ended to pulmonary embolism, and he passed within 2 days. Friday, he went to the hospital. Sunday, he was gone. I got there Monday, a day after his death. And I walked into his apartment. His food was still the dishes were still there, dirty, medication by the side of his bed, his clothes, his blanket that he loved, still on that couch. Everything was there but him. He had food in the fridge that he was like, when I get better, I'll eat this and I'll eat that. And so it was life interrupted, his life, our lives. Everything else was the same. The world kept moving. The sun kept shining. The birds kept chirping. And then I looked at all his writings, and so I co-authored it, writing the foreword, and I kept the blogs in the same order as they were written. And it ends with New Beginnings, where he talks about leaving this world. And he was very candid about his journey. He never sugarcoats anything. And he talks about hope, aspiration, life lessons, his reflections as he faced mortality. And he knew tomorrow wasn't promised to him, and he held on hope. And then I write the epilogue, and the epilogue is our journey. We lived in 5 different countries. So it's how we became as a nuclear family, close and resilient to what life presented us with and the aftermath of cancer. Cancer stopped hurting Manu, but it didn't stop hurting us as a family. We're still hurt by it. We have scars that are unseen. Manu had the scars of chemo radiation. We have emotional scars that can never heal. And yeah, so this is a very open discussion about life after cancer, and that's what the epilogue's all about.
So thank you for sharing. And yeah, you're so brave, and the way that you speak and your words that you choose. So thank you. Thank you for that. So your why of what you do is woven into everything you just shared. I hear it so much, right? But the why drives you. So that's maybe the start of the why, but there's a whole more of a why I think you want to share.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's to bring the awareness to oral cancer. When you're in your 30s and you're healthy, I mean, he played rugby, he played every sport imaginable. He won badminton and squash championships. He golfed, he even kayaked even the picture on the book, on the back of it is him on his kayak after receiving radiation before the cancer metastasized in the summer of 2020. And so he was so full of life. And so you never expect cancer to hit you, but, not to be ignorant of the fact that cancer can happen to any of us and it has no bar. It's bringing that awareness, especially to our community. And, sometimes you go to the dentist and people are so focused, we need to do your checkup cleaning and, let's focus on your veneers, let's focus on this. And you're focused on one tooth sometimes. And it's like oral health, like you said, it's overall health. If you're not having good teeth and good hygiene, good overall, it affects your whole body. And when we're doing full comprehensive, it's a reminder to dental professionals that when you're doing a checkup, don't just look at the teeth, look at the person, ask the question, any lumps or bumps, what's your, are you smoking? Are you vaping, especially with young kids? What, are you chewing tobacco? Do you have an HPV vaccine? Like all these questions that we don't think of, to be more mindful when we're seeing our patients. And even if yourself, like you would do a breast exam, you see a lesion in your mouth and it hasn't healed, you need to go get it checked out because it necessarily doesn't have to hurt. And so that's my why is like, I couldn't save Manu. He was my only sibling. He was my younger sibling and it was my job to protect him. But with COVID and all these other restrictions life presented us with, we didn't have an option. I couldn't save him. Maybe I could save someone else. And I have nothing else of Manu to share the world with. I don't have, he was not married, no children. So his words, his book, his wisdom is leaving a sort of a legacy that I'd like to retain.
Yeah. Beautiful. There's an Egyptian proverb. It says that we die twice. Once when we physically die and another when we stop telling the stories.
Yeah.
So through your wisdom and energy and your why and the book, it's a ripple effect for his legacy to live on, to save people. So congratulations and thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go into, I think it's a good time to kind of talk about like processing the grief. How was that for you?
It was very challenging. Again, he passed, I didn't get to say goodbye to him in person. I said it on a video call, just like you and I are talking right now. He was in hospice and I was told, so Friday he went to the hospital. They said, don't bother him. He's being admitted. Saturday I was at work with patients and I was told he's in palliative, but we're moving him to hospice. The palliative team is meeting and this is kind of it. So call us later on by my parents. And my parents are elderly. They had no other support system. On Sunday in the morning, I got that call you need to get here as soon as possible. I did have my compassion release paperwork that I needed to cross the border and not quarantine at that time. And I called the consulate and I said on a Sunday and I'm like, I need to get here. And they wouldn't let me in without PCR. We expedited it. I got in. And then this whole process is very alone. It's what you thought life would be. I didn't get to embarrass him at his wedding with a speech. I had to write a eulogy. I didn't get to pick baby shower, baby clothes for his kids. I got to pick out his suit that he got cremated in. It's all these life expectations that get taken away from you. And the grief was almost like I was in autopilot. My dad couldn't do certain things. My mom couldn't do certain things, like picking out his clothes. My dad's like, I don't want to go to the funeral home till the last day. And so I was picking out his pictures for the funeral. We only were allowed 20 people at the funeral. So that protection from grief that you have from a village of your friends and family, we were like left raw open to the grief. It was no emotional support, no family support. People weren't even allowed to come in because of Canada restrictions. You couldn't enter into the house. You had to, with only 20 people, everything was on Zoom. And so we still did a celebration of life months later when restrictions opened up. And then for me to finish all of that and then come back home, and then it clicked. Oh my God, what has my body gone through? My mind didn't process it. And it took like a few months, and it ended me having, when I listened to the music that he liked, it ended me having panic attacks, because that's when I realized, oh my God. And my parents had their emotional struggles. And slowly it's been, because I didn't have I lost my grandparents the same year as Manu. They were my only surviving grandparents. I didn't have my cousins around me. They live in different countries. I didn't have any other sibling to share that loss with. Parents losing a child is very different than you losing a sibling. My parents still had another child, have grandkids. I have no one to share this with. And so it's a very unique grief that I had, and nobody that I grew up with that knew Manu were around me. So it was like little snippets. And so definitely writing and sharing helped. Also, I created a podcast where I spoke to Manus, who are all doctors and dentists, who were with Manu in his last days. So they shared me a different facet of Manu. And it's getting these stories collectively, putting them all together, that helped the process and open to talking about it.
Yeah. And then is the process of the doctors in the book as well, and mentioning the podcast, was that before or after the book came out?
After the book came out. We created that after the book came out.
And how many pages is the book?
It's a quick read. It's about 84 pages. And we created the podcast on his death anniversary. We started it then in March, and we ended it with his birthday anniversary in June. So it's just, small. And again, it was just this raw conversation about what Manu meant to them, to me, and silly stuff, between friends, and that I didn't hear as an older sister.
Yeah. And we'll put the link in the show notes as well.
Sure.
For the podcast.
Sure.
If someone wants to tune in and listen to it.
Yeah.
One thing that came up is it's so heavy, like all the stuff you're talking about, all the things you have to deal with, and writing was your outlet to make light of things, to process things, and also sounds like you had to raise your voice and speak out in such a way to create support systems. Like the support systems weren't just there for you. Like a lot of people who are probably tuning in and listening, they feel like they don't have the support system either. And you're already feeling heavy and growing through what you're growing through. But then you had to create your own support systems as well. So, wow.
There was no other choice. Either I drown or I had to swim, and I had to swim. So I had no choice. I had to create it so I could mentally come back to me.
Yeah. So that's wow. So that, I guess we could swim into finding hope after a loss, because in that moment of not sinking, you must have had some kind of hope to be able to make the choice. How is that when you find the choice where you can't sink, that you're going to swim? What's your thought process? Like, what happened? And then is that in the book as well? Do you share that in the book?
So it was pretty hopeless when I found the book, and I wrote it because it was really right after his death. But over the period of time since his passing, I've realized that, the energy of Manu, the essence of Manu, even though physically is not there, it is still present around me, and I see it in little nuances, and it'll be simple stuff like, I kid you not, I'll tell you a story. We planned a trip to Hawaii for my dad's 70th birthday, and that trip never happened because COVID hit, and a month later his cancer had returned in 2020, and we never did. So after his death, I told my parents, I'm going to go to Hawaii with my family, and you guys come. And they said, no, you just go on your own. And everywhere we found like little things. Like I found somebody in our hotel that wearing the Banff sweatshirt, which is where Manu kayaked, But the most interesting point was we did the road to Hana, which is, I don't know if you've ever been in Maui, the road to Hana, which is a 12-mile windy road with cliffside. So you have the ocean on one side, and it's a small passageway. There only one car can pass in certain spots. So you have huge, beautiful scenery on the right of you or left of you, whichever direction you're going in, and it's cliffside, and then you're and the water, the ocean. And we go and we get to Hannah, and then it's all dirt road. So my husband's like, should we go? I'm like, yeah, let's go. We'll get some ice cream. I really need to have these little stalls. Town of Hannah has only 1,000 population. And so we're like, let's just go check it out. And we go, and I told my husband, I'm like, I see something, back up. And he's like, we're on a one-way street. I cannot back up. I'm like, no, just back up. Because I saw a house and I had a board there and it said, Hale Manu. Hale means home of, Manu, M-A-N-U. It blew my mind. I have a picture of it. It's in my album. And I'm like, there you are. The fact that we went beyond our generation and we found a house and it said his name, not a short form, not a long form, that name and the home. So it's these little things that I have experienced that gives me that Manu's still out there. He's still listening. And in some way, and then there have been many circumstances like this that I have felt him near me.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like that's where the desire where y'all wanted to go together, and then you just knew he's peacefully resting,
He's at rest, he's at peace, and I get these little things, and that keeps me going, that whatever I'm doing, he's okay with it, he's proud of it.
So what's something little or big that's just happened maybe in the last week or two or something?
Manu was invited to speak at the Alberta Dental Association because he worked in Calgary. That's where my folks live. In June of this year, in 2023, I was invited to speak at the Alberta Dental Association for their wellness program. After an oral cancer, I was asked to do a book reading. So it was doing a book reading where Manu was initially invited and couldn't do it. And here I was in my hometown of Calgary in his birthday month because he was a June baby. Having to, and it was like a full circle that he started this journey and I helped kind of finish it. And that was very, very special to me. And I got to speak with an oral surgeon who was the one who diagnosed Manu, his cancer, and was there, and he's in the podcast as well. He's not in the podcast, but he's been through the whole process with us. So yeah, that was very special and remarkable.
Yeah.
And I'm not oblivious to that. It doesn't happen for everyone. And I think Manu had a play in it.
You're aware of these things that happen and you connect them.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way of the process happening. But sometimes, I think you mentioned a moment ago, but sometimes do you ask and look for a sign and you can just like look up or look left or right, or just something will appear or a call will come, like do things like that when you're in a desperate need of hope, when you're growing through what you were alone, and you called out. Did you call out and did it show up, or sometimes did you call out?
It did. And in fact, a couple of things. One is I remember being in my office and just having a bad day, and I'm a dentist. So I was just alone in the office on my administrative day. And just like, I was just talking to Manu, like, oh my God, I'm just tired. Things with COVID is really hit hard the dental industry. And I had somebody walk in, and literally it was, I think, maybe half an hour after I did that talk. And he walked in and he's like, I want to make an appointment. I'm like, sure, what's your date of birth? Here's the interesting thing, different years, but his date of birth was Manu's death anniversary. And he's like, I want to make an appointment for my wife. And his wife's date of birth was Manu's birthday.
Wow.
Different year.
Wow. I have chills right now. Wow.
I just looked at it and I was like, what?
Yeah. I think these are the things we actually live for, those synchronicities.
And I was alone doing this, and I just looked at it and I'm like, what? Yeah. And then I have a tree outside that was gifted to me, and I have a bench that says a little, beautiful souls create beautiful memories. And it's a little bench that's outside my house, and I tie a balloon to it because it's a living object. So his birthday, I tie a balloon, and then I'm a Hindu faith, and we have what's called Rakhi, where a sister ties and I talk about that in the book. It ties a string to her brother, and it's a sign of protection that you take care of each other as siblings. And so I tied to the tree. But this year I did a balloon, and I think a couple of days later it was gone. I'm like, Manu took his balloon home.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
string was there and the
Yeah.
balloon's gone after a few days. And I'm like, oh, he got it. So it's
Yeah.
these little
Yeah.
things that that I find some kind of
Hmm.
a sense of like, yeah, his energy is still there. And, it's just our senses don't detect it. We only have those five senses that doesn't, but you never know what's there.
Yeah, speaking of energy and the spirit and your wisdom and the joy that's exuding out of you right now, I pick up it sounded like you created a new relationship with Manu. Like you created a new found relationship. And so you have these joyous moments where you're interconnected every single day, multiple times a day, but in a new
And
way.
anyway, yeah. And
Yeah.
whenever I sign a book, I had a friend take his signature and make it into a bracelet. So whenever I sign my books, I sign it with that bracelet on as that essence that he's signing it. Yes.
You're close to New York. So are you going to have a book signing in New York again?
I did have one in March of 21 as his 22 after his 1 year anniversary. Not at this moment because we had a big one. We had about 100 people show up.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've debated to have another one. Maybe at another anniversary, we may create one.
And then you mentioned you spoke in New York City, but share about your experience and the talk you gave in New York City.
I will definitely share it. And I've got a little story about it too. It's called Beyond the Lights. And I talk about me as a dentist, we have control. We're working in small spaces and how I lost control when my brother was diagnosed and there was nothing I could do about it. And how I lost faith in religion and I turned instead to the universe, and talking to the universe. So, and, you can hear the speech and it'll be, we'll have the link. And, but I talk about, I've been to Iceland in search of the Northern Lights and Calgary. I've searched everywhere. And, I track the KP levels and the BZ winds and weather. There's a whole lot of criteria and I've never found them. And so March 14th, he died. And I was there for the whole 2 weeks. But on the 21st, I dragged my mother to go see the Northern Lights. I'm like, the conditions are right. Let's go. We're not sleeping because, sleep has become a stranger at this point. There are all these thoughts and emotions going through. Nobody's sleeping. So it's like 1:00 in the morning and I drag her and I'm like, let's get out of the city and let's go look for them. And it's cold. It's March in Calgary. It's cold. And I drag her and as soon as we pass the city lights, I see these waves of light and it's not clouds. It looks very different. And the Northern Lights appear white sometimes to the naked eye. And when you start taking pictures, you'll see those hues, those green hues. Sure enough, there were the Northern Lights. And in the Canadian Indians or the natives, they say that the Northern Lights are old souls coming back to take the new souls. And it's a moment to rejoice and to celebrate. And you shouldn't be sad. You should be happy. And sometimes these lights will sing to you. And the day we saw them was the day that Manu was getting cremated. So his body was still on earth, but this was the process where he's going to be, taken back into the elements of fire, earth, wind, and water. So seeing that on that day, I have not seen them since. It was very special. And this is what I talk about, the universe, how it said to me, like, it's okay to let Manu go. It's okay. We'll take care of him. And he'll be okay and you'll be okay too. And that's how I interpreted it. And that's how I believe in the power of the universe and how it's connected me to everyone. And it's just very special.
It opens us up to more, a bigger canvas instead of just, you mentioned religion, instead of just the expectations and the knowings and unknowings and justifications for religion. Like, okay, here's your religion, but it's a base. Right. It's a strong base, but I need to go wider and deeper and I'm going to release what I've been taught, what I know, what beliefs I created. And it's still there within me, but I'm just going to open myself up more to the universe. So then you were able to open yourself more, to learn more, to discover more. That's such great insight and wisdom. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. And it answers back. You just have to listen.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yeah. So thanks. That's a great story. Thank you. Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, or you just mentioned your religion. And you mentioned earlier, well, you just mentioned, and earlier you mentioned cremation. Tell us about that process, because I've never spoken about cremation on the show before. And I know a lot of people don't even talk about cremation or death, and they won't even say the word. They're just so paranoid and scared or like superstitious. So, but the example you just gave of knowing something and then expanding to the universe. So, in letting go of our paranoia of what we've been taught about death and cremation, what are your beliefs and where you come from? So there's many people such as yourself who that's the way to do it, and that's the way it's going to be, or that's the way someone wants it. But from your experience, from someone who doesn't know, it's not the way I grew up, but I know about it. I want to hear insight and wisdom from your corner of the universe about cremation.
So
the root of it, and then your journey.
So I am of Hindu faith. I'm not a practicing Hindu, I would say, but I grew up learning about it. And we believe in reincarnation, that as you do the karma, like if you're good, you get a good life in your next life, and your soul develops until you reach the highest enlightenment stage, which is nirvana. And so your whole process of life is to keep doing good until you get mukti, which is like your soul is freed. So your soul is recycling. It's basically recycling bodies, same soul, different bodies. So Manu, if you read his words, the way he writes is not somebody who is 32 years old or 34 years old at the time. It's somebody who has had a lot of life experience when you read the way he's written his words. And I've always felt that he was an old soul. He may be young in human years, but an old soul. And so I've been told by mediums that he was, his soul journey was done. And so he's gone. And that's what a lot of the Hinduism faith is on. So like to accept it that we're all on a train journey, and some people's stops are sooner than others because their soul has kind of reached that point. And that so once the soul has departed from your body and is going to find another body to, go into and move on in their soul journey, that body has to go back into the elements. And the elements are, when we cremate, it goes in fire and wind, and then of course earth, because we don't cremate in a crematorium, we cremate on the ground with sticks, and then the ashes are taken, and they are taken in, religiously speaking, they're taken to the Ganga River in India, which is a holy river, or any body of water. Their ashes are released into that. We released Manu's ashes, and I did that with my parents and my young kids. At that time, they were really young. They didn't quite know the concept of life and death, and was trying to, their concept of life and death was the fish died, we got a new fish, but not a human. And it was like, oh, Manu is now in this box, and now we're dispersing this, and he's gone. And it's learning that life and death go hand in hand. It's just a circle of life, and we're all going to die one day. We're all going to rebirth in our culture one day in a different form. And that's what the belief is, and that's what the cremation is, releasing the body back to the elements, and the soul goes to another journey and carries on until it reaches the enlightenment stage.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate those words. Of course, we recommend your book, Life Interrupted, but also, is there a specific, in your experience in religion, is there an author or a book? It's kind of the go-to book that you'd go to for people to learn more about cremation?
Not that I have personally read. I did read a great book. It's called Signs, and it's written by, do you know who it is? She is a medium. She's a Long Island medium, actually. Oh my God, I can't, the name's not coming to my head, but it's just called Signs. And I really felt, after reading that book, it kind of connected me to how not thinking of death as death, but like thinking of passing through to another journey, and being more conscious and aware of the energy around me. So that was a great healing book that I felt a process and really be more in tune to what I'm experiencing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you. Sounds really interesting. You mentioned twice mediums. I know it's an interesting field, and it's kind of referral and who you know. from your experience, how do you decipher if someone wants to see a medium? Where should they start, and what to look out for that are green flags and red flags to make sure it's an ethical, good medium with good information? Because, there's horrific experiences and stories out there, I'm
Whatever.
sure, which people get turned off or won't go to because they don't know where to start. But if someone wanted to, how do you know if it's a good medium?
It's a very touchy topic. Not everybody believes in it. And I'm sure in certain faiths it's considered witchcraft, but it's a way of healing, right? Some find healing in working out or writing or getting more religious or in any form, right? It's just, and for me, it was just, maybe it's a part of therapy, but I did find somebody through referral, and you feel the essence when, I've only had two mediums and I vetted them through other people. And when I went in there is how I felt when I was there, that I didn't feel threatened or like this person's taking me for a ride, telling me things that nobody else knew. And simple things that it's not even written that can be found. There's Google. You can Google a lot of stuff, especially if you're out there and you're speaking and I can Google and find out so much about you, Katie. So it's things that that are not very well known or haven't told anybody. So not every medium is going to tell you the exact, like they tell you an essence of the event, and it's how you feel around them. Just like a bad person and a good person, you feel the energy. I feel like that's how I felt with the mediums. It's if I felt calm in their presence, I didn't feel agitated. Whatever they were saying did make sense in my head. I may not say it so that to lead them on onto something, but I'm like, yeah, it makes sense, and I hear what you're saying. It's creating that. And they're also reading off of cards, or they're reading off of your energy. So they're also deciphering, and it's up to you how to interpret it, right? So that's why it's, I think it was just a form for me. It was just a form of like, okay, there's a connection between me and my brother that is beyond this physical world. And this is something that I never dwelled in. I am not doing tarot cards. I'm not doing any of that. It's just after reading that book, after trying to, when you lose somebody and you didn't actually get to say goodbye in person and you're just holding on to straws and you're trying to find some connection. And for me, it was in the concept of the universe, in the concept of energy and feeling the presence, not necessarily physically. And the medium I felt was like a way to connect the beyond.
I see.
Yeah, but it's how you feel in the presence of that person. And I think it's very subjective.
And I feel this slides us into how life changes trajectory.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the experiences you just shared, that's part of it, to feel that connection.
Yeah.
What are some other changes
of my life trajectory?
If you would like to share that, how life changes the trajectory. So would be from your lens.
So for me, after Manu's passing, and I think a lot of people will vouch for that, you realize how many friends you really have who are there when you need them. I have called people at like the dead of night, or I've called people, I can't breathe, I need help, I need a break, I need to get out, and they're there. They're like, all right, let's get you. Those are the people that you count on. I don't care about anybody else. And that's made me realize my priorities to the friendships and the relationships. And not all family is truly in your favor. You cannot pick your family, you can pick your friends. And you can make family that is not blood. So these are some key points that I have come across. Sharing too much with a certain person may not be because they're not in my best interest, or they're not looking out for my best interest. They may feel a certain sense of jealousy and they're not supporting. And it's finding your tribe again. And that's my healing process, was that because I didn't have this village shielding me from grief. I had to go seek these people who will take care of me. I had to go find them. Nobody's coming to help you. You have to help yourself. You have to recognize, and it's the process I've realized, that trajectory, saying no to things now. When I get invited to places and I genuinely don't feel good about being there because I'm not having a good day, I'm just feeling the hurt and the pain, because grief goes in waves. It's not like it's been a year, it's been 2 years, it's been 10 years and it's over. No, it can feel like It was yesterday. And so when I'm not able to give my best at an event, somebody's celebration, I'm not coming. I don't want to bring my negativity if I'm not feeling my best and joy, and I'm genuinely joyful. So it's realizing to listen to myself, to pick and choose, and really support the people who have supported me when I've been at my lowest. And it's creating that tighter network of friends and family that there. So
this also sounds, two things come up for me. It sounds, three things, but burnout, right? Just not having the energy for the things you once did because your high hopes and the rose-colored glasses came off, and
yes.
you saw people's true intentions, where it's like we're unconscious and not aware, but then we become more intentional and conscious of the reciprocated energy. What's leaving the train station, what's coming back? Is it just all going out, and you saw how much of your energy was going out and it wasn't reciprocated? So then you found a new level of self-respect, of being in the driver's seat, of having boundaries, of not being taken advantage of. And just because they're your family or you've known them for a lifetime or 10 years, but to check in with how you feel, which is beautiful. And and then our vitality, we are given so much vitality. And when we don't have our vitality, then the flame is out. So your vitality, and it's like there's an event or something like that, and it's like before you would go and pull up the big boy pants or whatever you want to call it, or put on the dress and just show up and go, but you don't torture and put yourself through that like you once did. And that principle applies to everyone and many situations, and it can be acknowledged in a gentle conversation like this. And it doesn't have to be, that's when you do the healing, it's more gentle, right? Yeah. Not all the time, but a lot of times it is more gentle, and you can move through these waves of emotions in a gentle way. And then sometimes, certain things need to happen for that wake up call to understand that internal journey. But, that's that famous saying of everything's inside and not outside. People go for adventures on the outside to do all this looking, but it's inside, but we just don't know how to access it.
Right. And hopefully nobody has this kind of a wake up call. Hopefully it's not as severe to realize what, you're so energy leaving and not coming back. It has to be a two-way street.
Well, it happens every day, multiple times a day, not this particular situation, but situations. I mean, it's a part of life and death and being here and the chaos of the beast and the beauty. And, so we hope it's easier on people and that we don't have to go through these journeys. I'm not a wizard or a doctor or anything, but I've just come to find that it's a part of the process, but it's how we respond to it, right? And how we relate to it and how we can keep going in the midst of the rocky waves. But what did you say? The midst of
the
what?
Chaos.
There you go. Yeah. Honing it in. Pick up the book. The link is in the show notes. Life Interrupted, Dr. Dua's Survival Guide. Lastly, would you like to read a short piece from the book? Okay.
I can read what the very last thing he wrote, or something on hope or new beginnings.
You choose.
Or
death. Maybe the last thing or the hope, since there's 4 options. You decide.
Okay. I'll read. This is from New Beginnings, and I quote Manu. One of the most important things that I have learned during these turbulent and difficult times is to accept the loss of control and to continue to ride the wave day by day. The ability to focus and get through each day is imperative when your world collapses around you. I write this as I am in a hospital bed with one lung almost collapsed from fluid. And to be perfectly honest, I have found my peace. I understand that every day is a new journey, and I focus on getting through the days, enjoying little victories, and having complete faith that the future will unfold as it should. And my worries and anxieties are normal but fruitless, and will not help me to find a new path in life. What is imperative is the inner peace, strength, and truly believing that there will be a better life in this world or the next. End quote.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. Check out the show notes below, everyone. Dr. Parul Dua Makkar. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. This is beautiful.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Kiriaki, over and out.